Good morning. Welcome to the 6th Annual Compassion Through the Crisis Breakfast in person. Please give yourselves a round of applause. I'm Connie Ray, and I am your MC for this morning. Also a board member for Crisis Support Services of Nevada, and we are so excited to have this event again in person, full room. Thank you all so very much for being here. We greatly appreciate your attendance. This morning, we are here to celebrate a major accomplishment and also help you better understand the significance of the 988 Crisis Lifeline and how it impacts our entire community and all of Nevada as it relates to assisting with mental health and behavioral health issues. This morning, you are going to hear from individuals who see 988 as a tool to help end the stigma that surrounds mental health. You'll better understand how 988 can help save lives. I want to thank the board of directors for working so very hard to put this event together. Can I please have all of our Crisis Support Services board members stand and be recognized? Thank you so much. Stephen, you still stay standing over there, Stephen. Just so you know, we had a little tiny competition amongst our board and our staff about who could get the most guests to the breakfast. Stephen came in first place, 70 guests. I do want to say that I did bring Stephen on the board. I love you, Stephen. Thank you so very much. We also want to say a very big hello to all of our online folks across the state who have joined us through YouTube. Thank you again for being here. We greatly appreciate it. Right now, I'd also like to take a moment to thank our sponsors for making this year's breakfast possible. Thank you to Beacon Health Options, Renown Health, Sierra Health and Wellness Centers, Greater Nevada Credit Union, Solutions at Work, EOS Consulting. Right now, I would like to take a moment to introduce our mayor. As I mentioned, we have a lot going on in our community, including the NAMI event that is happening today as well. So unfortunately, our mayor could not be here in person, but she did send a message for us this morning.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Reno Mayor Hillary Sheevy, here to welcome you to the Crisis Support Services of Nevada's 6th Annual Compassion Through Crisis Breakfast. Unfortunately, I couldn't be there in person to celebrate the many accomplishments the organization has achieved this past year. But you've been an empathetic ear for our region for years, and now with the new 988 line, you'll continue to be that beacon of hope. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for all you do, and thank you to Connie Ray. I love all of you. Mwah. Thank you for all your work you do in mental health. Thank you.
We also have a couple of local and state politicians in the audience today. We'd like to say a welcome to Senator Heidi Gansert, and Assemblymember Lisa Krasner. These two ladies have supported crisis support services in Nevada since the first Compassion Through the Crisis and have been at this event ever since. We greatly appreciate you and thank you so much for your steadfast support. We also have with us this morning our Washoe County Commissioner, Alexis Hill, and our Sparks City Councilman, Dan Vanderwell. Thank you all very much for joining us. Right now, I would like to introduce our Executive Director of Crisis Support Services of Nevada. Please welcome Rochelle Pellessier.
Good morning. Good to be live in person. Gosh, it's been so many years. It's just so nice to see all of you guys. Thanks for attending with us this morning on this very important occasion. As you all know, I have been, or maybe you don't know this, my name, as Connie Ray said, is Rochelle Pellessier. I've been the Executive Director of Crisis Support Services for about almost 7 years now. It's been a good 7-year run. So here's to many more wonderful things as we continue to grow. It's so good to see all of your faces out there that I do know and have worked with over the years. Better make sure I have everything on here. Thank you again for coming. We just wanted to talk a little bit, of course, about crisis support services in Nevada and what we've been doing, our history and where we are today, and all the amazing things that are going on both in Nevada and across the nation that we get to participate in. So as most of you know, we opened Crisis Support Services, known back then as the Crisis Call Center, on April 1st of 1966. I know many of you weren't even born back then. And we were established by the pioneers back then to address Nevada's high rate of suicide, even back then. And unfortunately, we stayed in that #1 position, having the most suicides per capita in the nation for many, many, many years. We didn't get out of that unfortunate position until about the early 2000s. And we're currently tied for 12th. We're out of the top 10, thank God. But it's taken us a while and a lot of work to get to that place. And it's taken Crisis Support Services of Nevada 56 years to help us get there. Our first office was in the library at UNR. It was in a phone booth. I love showing this picture because it always cracks me up. Most people don't even know what phone. It always amazes me that those pioneers were able to figure something like that out. When the volunteers took the calls at night, they did what we do now. They de-escalate, they take care of people and give resources. But when they had to call in emergency services, they had to send their spouse or their child next door to call on their landline, to call the police back then, because that was even before 911. So I love to tell that story. Amazing history. We've been doing this a long time. In the first few months of operations, we saw that we couldn't just focus on suicide. We had to focus on any trauma, any crisis, because any type of trauma and crisis get us to a point where death seems like the best alternative to the pain that we're feeling. So we had to understand a little bit about everything and deal with every crisis as they came along. And I'm very proud to say that those pioneers really truly were pioneers. They we are the second longest running crisis center in the nation, right behind Dee Dee Hirsch in Los Angeles. So for me, that is really amazing. So we continue to do what we've always done for the last 56 years. We continue to be a call center for the entire state of Nevada. We also are one of only 12 national suicide prevention call centers, or now known as a 988 Lifeline call center. And what that looks like is each call center, there's about 200 across the nation. They're all independent call centers. They each have a region. Most of them are like a county or another part of a state. Our region happens to be for the whole state of Nevada. And when calls come in from our region, if we're overwhelmed with calls, because we're all nonprofits and we never have enough money to have enough people on when the call volume is really high. So when our call centers are overwhelmed, then it rolls out to one of those 12 national call centers, one of which is us. So we don't just take care of the state of Nevada, we help people across the nation, and we do this 24/7. So we're really proud to be a leader, not just in Nevada, but in this nation to deal with crisis. We do lots of other things besides answer the Lifeline, 988 Lifeline, and I'm going to go through these really quickly. We take Child Protective Service reports for all the rural counties. We do that 24/7. We take elder and adults with disability, we call them vulnerable adults, abuse reports after hours for ADSD. Dina's here, the administrator for our state. We also take after-hour calls for all of Nevada's rural mental or behavioral health clinics. And we have a statewide substance abuse helpline, and we take after-hours calls for both UNR and UNLV's clinical services. We just expanded to UNLV this last year. So when a student at one of those colleges are in crisis and call into their clinics, after hours they'll come to us and we'll do what we usually do. Whoops, wrong direction, sorry guys. We take and deploy the immediate mental health care team in the rurals. Those are clinicians that are on call 7 days a week. Sorry, my brain is not functioning this morning. 7 days a week from 9 to 6. The calls come into us, we de-escalate, we do what we do, and then we get them to a clinician when the clinician is on duty, that 9 to 6 within 15 minutes. This is one of my favorite programs in this state. Right now, only accessible to the rurals. This is something that we need to expand as we create our behavioral health system. We're the hub of Open Beds. That's a service registry where we have right now 50 behavioral health providers on there that we can refer people into those services immediately when they call in. And then we take after hours Washoe County 311 calls or overflow 311 calls. We love doing that job. That one's always fun. And we take after hours calls for several of the community behavioral health clinics across the state. What did I do here? Sorry, you guys. Last year, we helped over 87,000 people in 2021, I should say. 5,200 of those contacts were by text messages, mostly youth. Over 35,000 of those were from Nevada callers. I told you that we were a national call center, so the rest of those were national calls, but over 35,000 of those calls were Nevadans in crisis. We took over 4,000 calls of victims of current or historic child abuse. That sometimes breaks my heart to read these statistics. And we took over 1,900 child abuse reports. We took over 1,700 calls of victims of abuse to a vulnerable adult and took over 1,000 reports around that. We helped over 2,000 callers of sexual assault, and our SAS advocates, our one in-person advocate program, helped over almost 500 sexual assault victims and their families. And then we took over 1,900 calls from victims of other crimes. So you can see, it doesn't matter the subject. If it puts you in crisis, you're going to be calling us. So we're here to talk about 988 and the crisis response system that we're building across the nation and in Nevada. So what is 988? A lot of people still don't know. Well, we're not great at marketing things like this across the nation. So I kind of call it the behavioral 911, although it doesn't act exactly like 911. When you call 988, 988 is a shortened version of that 10-digit number that we all used to have on all of our tchotchkes. You have some of them in the little baggies. But when someone's in crisis, it's very hard to remember a 10-digit number. I know I have a hard time remembering it, and I'm not in crisis, and I still can't remember it. And I work in the number of numbers, a 10-digit number to just 3 digits. We can all remember that when we're in crisis. So that's the importance of coming up with a 3-digit number to get help in a crisis quickly, easy to remember. Because I know the last time I was in crisis, I had a hard time remembering my own phone number, but I never forget things like 911. So 988, that's the beauty of this. 988, when you call 988, it connects you with the person a trained crisis counselor to help de-escalate you and get you to the resources that you need to get you out of that crisis. It reduces healthcare spending. It reduces law enforcement, public health, and other safety concerns when you can just call 988. It meets the growing need for crisis intervention, as we all know, and it helps end stigma. This is one of the most important things. There's a place that you're actually supposed to call when you're in crisis, when you're in a behavioral health crisis, that you don't have to feel ashamed because you're in a behavioral health crisis. A behavioral health crisis is the same as a physical health crisis. It should be treated the same and not criminalized or dealt with stigma, or maybe lose your job because you admit that you have a behavioral health crisis. And it's the first part of the behavioral health crisis response system that we're building. So when we look at a crisis response system, the one that we're building here, and we're building across the nation, there are 4 parts. There's the call center, someone to talk to. There's crisis mobile teams who respond in person, someone to talk to, someone to respond. And then there's crisis receiving and stabilization centers, a place to go when you're in crisis. We're going to see some videos of people who have lived experience in a behavioral health crisis, but we really have nowhere to go right now if you're in a behavioral health crisis. You know, they might turn you away from the hospital. You're not in a physical health crisis. The police kind of have to take you if you need to be transported anywhere. So we really need, you know, all 3 of those components complete with somewhere to go when you're in crisis. And then essential crisis principles and practices for all of us to work by. Who do I hear? I hear some babies. Yay. There, oops, 1, 2 more. Sorry, I'm obviously not doing well with my clickers. There we go. Okay. So I talked about 988 is actually a federal legislation. It's a federal program of which we are building off of. So there was federal legislation, the National Suicide Hotline Designation Act, that passed in 2020 in October. And why? Why was this important to the federal government that we change this? You know, as we all know, America's in the middle of a mental health crisis. And since 1999, rates of suicide has increased by 30%. And I know it's increased in the last couple of years after COVID. 1 in 5 people over the age of 12 have a mental health condition. Suicide's the second leading cause of death among young people and the 10th leading cause of death in the for all people, sorry, words. Suicide is also the most preventable. For every person who dies by suicide, there are 280 who live by getting help, like through a call center. And if you think about that, call centers, these programs do work. We just have to use them. So how does 988 work? 988 calls go to the call center that services your area code. So it's not geolocation like 911. We are working on that because it's vitally important. When someone calls us in crisis, half the time they might not know where they are. They might be inebriated or have something in their system. It's very hard to find people in a mental health crisis. Even though they're calling us and they want the help, sometimes mentally they can't tell you where they are. So geolocation is really important, and that's something that we're working on federally. But right now, if you call 988, it's going to go to the call center that services your area code. So as we know, we move around. We don't change our cell phones anymore. So you might be in Nevada, but if you have a different area code, it's going to go to that call center, wherever that is. But we answer all of the calls that come from a Nevada area code come to us first. So that's kind of how 988 works. And what do we do when we answer those calls? We talked about that. We listen, we de-escalate, we refer services. And then, if they're at imminent risk of suicide or homicide, we contact emergency services. So 988 officially went live on July 16th of this year. We've been working with this. Obviously, we've been answering these phones for 56 years. So we've been answering phones for a long time. And it started going live in the last year, but it officially went live on July 16th. Since then, we've seen a 30% increase in calls to 988. 988 comes in on the same line as that 10-digit phone number comes in. So we can't tell whether it's a 988, they dialed 988 or the 10-digit call, but we have seen a 30% increase. We're receiving about 500 calls per week from Nevada 988 calls, and we're also receiving 160 texts and chats per week to 988. You can chat 988, and then there's a link to 988 to do chats. Our answer rate currently for Nevada calls is 81%. The average time of answer, that's the time in the queue, is just over 15 seconds. If someone abandons the call, that 19% that we're seeing here, the average time in queue is about 54 seconds for those. So we're really working on increasing all of those. Actually, we'd like to hit that 95% mark, that we answer 95% of the calls that come into us in 20 seconds. We beat the time, which I'm pretty happy about. We just need to increase our staffing so that we can increase our answer rates. Sorry. Looks like I'm missing one. There we go. One more. I have too many buttons. Nevada, so how else is it working, and what is working so far? Nevada is used to being 51st, as we all know, in most all mental health services. But in the planning for 988 and our behavioral health crisis response system, we're recognized as a leader in the nation carrying this out. Because of that, U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Secretary Javier Becerra visited us last month, and I've never been so proud, not just because our call center is doing so phenomenally, and we're only one of only 12 national call centers, but also because Nevada has been planning for this for the last 3 years, and we have a lot of partnerships in place that other states do not. One of the big things that Nevada did last year was pass legislation for sustainable funding for 988 and the crisis response system. That was SB 390. A very proud moment when Nevada passed legislation to sustainably fund behavioral health. So amazing. But we're one of only 5 states who have passed legislation for sustainable funding. So the federal government is really looking to us to help other states and lead the way. So we're not 51st in this, we're number 1 in building. We've been collaborating. I'm sorry our NAMI friends aren't here. We have a collaboration with NAMI's Warm Line. We pass people back and forth. Most states, the call centers and NAMI and Warm Lines haven't even started talking yet. We started a pilot project back, oh goodness, it's almost been 2 years now, I forget sometimes, with Washoe County Sheriff's Office and Reno PD to have them start passing their callers into 911 who are having suicidal ideations or some kind of mental health crisis directly to us, warm link them to us, and then we warm link them back if they're at imminent risk. Sparks is just joining us in that pilot project. So in Northern Nevada, we're really working closely with law enforcement, and we'll expand that. Not that we haven't been working with law enforcement across the state, but with 988 and behavioral health calls, we've already started working on that. Again, most states have not started collaborating and working on these things together. So I'm just so very proud of the work that we're doing in Nevada. This is the Chinese symbol for crisis, and I use this every year because I love this. This actually used to be the Crisis Call Center's logo. I know there's some of you in here that remember this logo. Misty's sitting out there. I know she remembers this logo, and there's a very good reason. John F. Kennedy once said about this logo, the Chinese used 2 brush strokes to write the word crisis. One brush stroke stands for danger, the other for opportunity. In a crisis, be aware of the danger, but recognize the opportunity. And the Pollyanna in me this sings to me. I always think something good always comes from crisis. And we have to remember those opportunities. And right now, as a state and as a nation, we have an opportunity to build a system to help our family members and loved ones when they're in a crisis. Because right now, they don't tell us because it's so stigmatized. We have this opportunity. COVID was a disaster, but it gave us the opportunity to talk about mental health. That crisis gave us this opportunity, and we can build this. We can build this system. So there's always someone to call, someone to come to us, and somewhere to go when we're in a crisis. So please help us. You'll hear more about this as we build it. Collaborations are so important to us with all of your organizations. So you'll be hearing from me as we move forward and as we continue to build this really important behavioral health response system in the future. So thank you again for all coming, and I will see you soon.
Thank you, Rochelle. Our lived experience speaker this year is Michelle Scott. She is a supervisor at NAMI Western Nevada, and she was unable to attend our breakfast in person today, but thank goodness for technology, we do have a video that she would like to share with you today.
Good morning. Let's start with a deep breath to get us all oriented and settle my nerves. My name is Michelle Scott. In 2019, after 5 years, I completed school through my bachelor's in social work. In December of 2020, I got the job I had dreamed of in mental health. Since my teens, I have had mental illness. During the 5 years of school, I was hospitalized 3 times. The tenacity I developed through living with mental illness also got me through my hospitalizations and school. I was misdiagnosed most of my life. As a teenager, I was released from the hospital and told I was borderline and felt emotions too much and that I'd never get better. That didn't do much for my wavering desire to live. I was later diagnosed with severe depression, then seasonal affective disorder, and finally, when I was 35, I was correctly diagnosed with complex PTSD, bipolar, and anxiety. The first 2 times of being hospitalized in my 30s were drastically different from the third time, mostly because it was a different hospital. The first 2 times I was taken by the police from my therapist's office in handcuffs to the hospital to make sure I hadn't overdosed and lied about it. Once the blood work was done, I was taken to jail to wait for a bed to open. Let me draw you a picture. I was stripped of my clothes and given an itchy dress to wear, then put in a cell that had a mat on the floor and a metal toilet with no toilet seat. I stayed there for however many hours it took to get a room available, which once took all day long. Once a bed was available, I was given back my clothes, handcuffed again, and put back into the police car for the hour-long drive to the hospital. Once I arrived at the hospital, I was taken to a small room with 2 nurses and told to strip. Along the way, they nonchalantly marked down the cuts on my body, including the words of self-hate all over my thighs, in a very clinical manner. Then I was given clothes. All of my belongings, including my prescriptions and medications, were locked up. I was told I would receive no medications until the doctor saw me. The first time, it was the 3rd day before I saw a doctor. Think about that. I was already barely holding on, and my antidepressants were stopped cold turkey, only to be re-prescribed after 3 days at a higher dose. The second time I saw a doctor the morning of the 2nd day and was prescribed something for anxiety. Later, I asked for my 2nd dose and was told I was 20 minutes early. At that point, I was so anxious, I couldn't stand it. I went into my room, and with the door open, I ripped my sheet and tried to tie it around my neck tight enough to kill myself. When that didn't work, I punched the wall until I punched a hole in it, and was then yelled at by a very large man. It was the first time I'd seen anyone come out from the nursing station all day. It took everything I had and several minutes of breathing to get myself under enough control to walk away instead of fighting with him. The next day, when I saw the doctor, I told him I must be feeling a little better because I hadn't done either of those behaviors. There was no note in the chart. My top sheet and robe were taken away, and I was under observation by another large man in a chair at the front of my room and expected to sleep. After a while, I just went in the main room to get away from him. Both times I was asked on the third day, "So are you ready to go home?" Because I felt I wasn't worth the space, I said okay, even though I wasn't stable. My third experience was much better. I was allowed to drive to this hospital and check myself in for observation. I was allowed my own clothes, minus belt or strings. A doctor saw me within 12 hours, and the nurses checked the status of my mood and medication side effects twice a day. I don't remember seeing them behind the desk very much. I was never taken off meds or forced to wait for them. They adjusted them immediately. When they asked me did I need to stay longer, they worked with my insurance company to get me more time. And because of their compassionate way of asking, I was able to fight my lack of self-worth and say no, I wasn't ready to leave. The staff interacted with us. We were taught skills, allowed to go on walks, and even had art classes in the evenings. We had phone hours to talk to our loved ones. When I left, I felt anxious but ready to take on my life again. Since then, I found NAMI and started talking to other people with mental illnesses that function as nurses, CEOs, and therapists. I was able to let go of my self-hatred and lack of self-worth that had stuck to me because of internalized stigma. I finally believed I could follow my dreams and make a difference in life. I took a series of classes from Didi Hirsch to help facilitate a suicide attempt survivors skill building group, and also began working in the mental health field. Mental illness doesn't guarantee a life on the streets or in group homes. A full life is possible, but we all need non-judgmental and compassionate care to get back on our feet when we fall. Thank you so much.
It truly is heartbreaking to hear what people experience during a behavioral health crisis. And that is why we've been working so hard to create a behavioral health crisis response system that will help Nevadans in crisis. Right now, I would like to introduce to you our Crisis Support Services Nevada board member and the Washoe County Undersheriff, Jeff Clark, to talk about his and law enforcement's experience with behavioral health crisis.
Hello, and thank you, Connie. I'm so happy to be speaking at this event this morning and seeing so many familiar faces. We have a lot of people in this room that give every day to this community, and I appreciate seeing you all. Please join me in thanking one more time the Crisis Support Services Executive Director, Rochelle Pelletier, and all the women and men who work at Crisis Support Services of Nevada day in and day out. They are the light in people's darkest day. Before I get started, will you just do me a favor and raise your hand if you know someone who has committed suicide or attempted to commit suicide? Look around. Isn't that crazy? We've all experienced this. As you can see, a lot of us share something in common. We have experienced crisis, mental health issues, and suicide in particular. Like Connie said, my name is Jeff Clark, and I'm the Undersheriff of the Washoe County Sheriff's Office. I am also extremely honored to be a board member for Crisis Support Services of Nevada. For more than 27 years, I've served as a first responder in our community. I wish my story was unique. However, first responders face crisis every single day. As a young officer fresh out of the military in Desert Storm, I began my career within 6 months of a fellow coworker, a deputy, committing suicide at the Washoe County Sheriff's Office. Just a year later, I began my patrol career in similar fashion. I responded to a high school student who was murdered at the hands of another student. Having a brand new baby at home, this was difficult. For weeks, months, every time I closed my eyes, I would re-experience what I had seen on that day. I was very fortunate. I had a loving family, a church who supported me through all these struggles. As a new detective, you start out learning the job, going to crime scenes, trying to be the best detective you can before you can take the on-call pager. When I finally achieved this level, I took the on-call pager on a Friday night. About 11 o'clock, the pager goes off. I responded to a teenage suicide of a police officer right here from Reno. His daughter committed suicide using a jump rope that he had bought her when she was a kid. For the next 5 years, the following day, around noon, pager goes off again. I had to respond to the opposite side of Washoe County to another teenage suicide hanging. We're in crisis. For the next 5 years, there were many more. Just last year, we had 2 staff members from the sheriff's office commit suicide. And just 3 weeks ago, a staff member's husband, who was also a member of our first responder community, took his own life. Sadly, as I previously stated, although these are just a few of my personal experiences, trauma is commonplace with first responders. Day in, day out, seeing, hearing, smelling, experiencing trauma, crisis, and things that we're not supposed to see as human beings. Although today we're doing better than ever before at training our first responders, this must continue, this must continue by breaking down barriers and reducing stigmatism associated with mental health. We still have a long way to go. It's providers such as Crisis Support Services that help us help the community. As a community, city, state, and country, we are in crisis. Just this morning, there was another officer-involved shooting in our community at the Sparks Police Department. Every day is a new crisis. As Rochelle stated, Nevada has the 12th highest suicide rate in the nation. Yes, we have come down from number 1, but we still have a long way to go. Did you know it's even worse for our seniors, who rank 4th in Nevada? You are here today because you care. You are compassionate while in crisis. I hope and encourage you to help do your part in supporting a nonprofit organization which does so much for our community. In July, Crisis Support Services took on another huge role, being named the primary 988 call center in Nevada. As you've heard, 988 is going to make finding help even easier, 24/7, 365 days a year. Through the last few years, as citizens, we've been challenged physically, emotionally, and mentally. We've experienced the worst pandemic in modern history, and we've entered a new era in social justice and policing. Through this, law enforcement and other first responders have faced challenges with defunding, while at the same time being challenged with responding to an increased mental health crisis in our community. To be honest, as with most police executives and chiefs across the country, if I could reduce my budget by not having my officers responding to mental health and crisis calls, we would be more than willing to do that. But we know that this is not possible. Fortunately, we live in an extraordinary community. A community who works together with our local providers, and together we support a unilateral response through teams such as mobile outreach safety teams, which pair law enforcement with mental health professionals. We've proven this model works. 988 is the next step in getting those experiencing crisis the help and support they need. Today, you can help make a difference. You can help support an organization who has been around since the 1960s, serving our community and helping communities across the country as a crisis call center. As you'll continue to hear, there are so many ways to give. The easiest for me is there's QR codes on your table. Please take a moment to take a picture of that QR code that will take you directly to our giving link. This morning, I leave you with this quote from Lisa Oliveira. Just because no one else can heal or do your inner work for you doesn't mean you can, should, or need to do it alone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Right now, I'd like to introduce you to the Crisis Support Services Board Vice President, Shannon Bell, and our President, Leanne Pingula, to introduce the Circle of Compassion recipients.
Good morning and thank you. As Jeff stated, partnerships with the community is what has helped Crisis Support Services of Nevada do what we do to a greater extent. Historically, we are sustained by state and federal grants, which limits us in what we can do sometimes for our community. Our Circle of Compassion honorees are those who have donated $5,000 or more to the organization over the last year. I am proud to say we have many Circle of Compassion partners, and today I'd like to introduce and welcome to the stage the following honorees. Beacon Health Options, Erin Henry and Renown Health, Annie Zucker, Sierra Health and Wellness Centers, Karen Jensen, and Reno Type, Clay Hall. If you could please join us on stage, we'd like to give you your Circle of Compassion Award. Without these partners, we would not be able to do some of the programs, such as a new program called Critical Conversations. That's an outreach program that we take out to organizations within the community that we are rolling out this year. Thank you again for all your support.
Thank you again to our Circle of Compassion honorees. Today, I am here to also share with you my family's story. I'm going to share the story of my bonus daughter, Katie. This is a story of love, loss, and hope. I became a stepmother to two beautiful girls in 2006, and how Katie and Jesse entered my life is not an unfamiliar story. It's not unique because we are a blended family. I began dating my husband in November of 2004, and his beautiful girls were his life. Katie was 11 and Jesse was 7. Katie was not my husband's biological daughter, but he had raised her since she was 2 years old. And to him, Katie was his daughter. He was born to be a dad. He's loving and attentive. He enjoys everything about it, including all of those bad dad jokes. When I met him, he was a single father who was hiding a painful secret. His ex-wife was addicted to methamphetamines, and he was trying to navigate a very difficult situation with 2 young children. I could see immediately that the girls were being directly impacted by their mother's addiction. What was most noticeable was that Katie was forced to take on the role of adult, keeping her younger sister out of the chaos. By the end of 2006, their mother couldn't hold down a job and she was using daily. I witnessed the girls' birthday parties where their mother would show up under the influence. Christmas and other holidays were intensely difficult, and the girls would have no idea if their mother would allow them to see their dad or their other family members. Then, in a fit of guilt or a moment of clarity, she would realize that the girls needed their dad. She would drop them off at her home and only to be gone for days on end on yet another drug bender. It was at this time that we started to notice that Katie's behavior was taking a downward spiral. She was bottled up, either holding in anger or acting out. By 2007, the impact of their mother's drug use was hitting crisis level. Then in the spring of 2007, we had received a call from Katie's school. It had been discovered that Katie was cutting herself. And although it was heartbreaking to know that this young, beautiful girl was self-harming, it was also the catalyst that led to Child Protective Services stepping in. And it was at this time that both of the girls were removed from their mother's care. Shortly thereafter, my husband was granted full guardianship of Katie and full custody of Jesse. And you may think that we were naive, but we thought that this would begin the time of healing. We could show the girls what a loving, safe home felt like. But what we quickly learned was that Katie had adapted to chaos, and she was struggling with what we saw as normalcy. Over the next year, both girls were engaged in intense therapy, and throughout that time in therapy, it had been determined that although both Katie and her sister had witnessed their mother's addiction and mental health, it was Katie who was their mother's sounding board. Katie's mom saw her as a confidant rather than a child. She was a 14-year-old girl who was experiencing her mother's unstable behavior, often violent relationships, and drug use. Within the first year of therapy, Katie herself was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and this was when we began to experience the challenges of living with a family member struggling with mental health. It was a daily battle, and some days were good. Katie was in a new school and she was making friends. She joined the marching band. She played soccer. She appeared to be adjusting. But there were days that were devastating, and it was as if Katie would intentionally derail. A switch would go off and we couldn't understand the self-sabotaging behavior. Throughout our own therapy sessions, my husband and I began to understand that this was common for someone's diagnosis that Katie had. Katie's therapist also informed us that this was learned behavior. She had witnessed her mother using these same tactics. During her senior year of high school, she had decided that the Navy was where she wanted to land. And we thought this would be great structure for Katie, exactly what she needed. We met with her recruiter, and he was really working hard to get Katie on track. And in February of 2010, my daughter's story was born, and for those few short months, life with Katie and our new family was filled with laughter and joy. But in May of 2010, after her 18th birthday, Katie moved out. She stopped all contact with the recruiter, and she stopped her therapy sessions. And by the end of December of 2010, she had moved in with a young man she had known for a few short months. They moved to Oregon. We soon found out later on that she was living with his brother, but they had been kicked out. The pattern for Katie was whenever things would get hard, she would run, either literally or figuratively. We had heard from Katie in the winter of 2010, and she told us she had joined the Marines. We held our breath and we hoped for the best. And during her time in boot camp, we would receive letters from Katie. She would beg us to forgive her. She shared with us that she had been homeless before joining the Marines, and that it was her Marine recruiter that put her up in his backyard in his shed. Katie said she never wanted to be in that place. She was opening up about the pain that she suffered growing up, and she talked about her childhood and the constant instability and her desire to be different. And it truly gave us hope that she was getting a handle on her mental health. But halfway through boot camp, my husband received word that Katie was in a mental health facility at Parris Island. She had gotten into some trouble. Honestly, my husband wasn't really sure what to do, but the good thing was that Katie was wise enough and told her therapist that her father was the only one she trusted. She agreed to have their therapist talk with her dad about their sessions. And after she was released from the mental health facility, she did complete boot camp. And she came home to Reno in the spring of 2010, and we were so proud of her. She appeared happy and healthy and so full of pride. I grew up in a military household myself, so we were incredibly proud of her accomplishments. Early on in her Marine career, we could see a change in her. She was maturing, she had purpose. Her relationship with her dad was back on track, and she was working hard to make improvements. But like many who suffer with bipolar disorder, the highs were high and the lows were low. In 2013, we learned that Katie was pregnant. She had started dating a young man a month prior, and she was going to marry this man, and it just seemed to blow our minds. Yet, I understood it all. Katie did get married, and her daughter Marilyn was born in March of 2014. Katie got out of the Marines in 2015, and she and her husband were stationed at the Bridgeport Mountain Warfare Facility where he was stationed. They moved to Gardnerville, Nevada. We had little contact with Katie at that time. She did try to reach out to her dad, but he was still grappling with all the things that had happened. In 2016, Katie had another little girl, Mary Jo. It was after the birth of Mary Jo that Katie began reaching out to me to help facilitate a meeting with her dad. She wanted us to know that she and her husband were doing well, and she was a mom, and she had found herself, and she wanted to show her dad how she had changed. We continued to talk, and in 2017, she gave birth to her son, Marcus. He was born premature. He was staying at Renown Children's Hospital in Reno, and I had reached out to Katie to let her know that her dad was aware of Marcus's health. He was thinking about her and the kids, and once everything was stable, he was ready to reconnect with Katie. Katie was ecstatic. And the meeting finally happened in November of 2017. It was a beautiful day. Katie was the happiest we had ever seen. My husband and I met her husband and the kids for the first time, and we hugged and we laughed and we cried. And she whispered in my ear, "Thank you, Mom. Thank you for bringing back my dad." I was overjoyed. Big things were going on in our lives too. I had just produced a new TV program for a local news show, and my husband was busy, the kids were doing great, and life was good. We were enjoying this reconnection with our family. On August 10th of 2018, we all got up that morning and we sent text messages to Katie wishing Marcus a very happy first birthday. We were looking forward to seeing the kids again to celebrate his birthday, and we had gone to dinner that night to celebrate a recent project I had received an award for. We were just riding high on this excitement of our family and all the good in our life. When we got home from dinner, we had settled in to watch a movie when my husband got a phone call, and at first, I didn't understand what was going on. All I could hear him say was, "It's Marcus's birthday, I don't understand." My husband walked into the back bedroom, and I followed him because I had never seen this look on his face before. He was still talking to Katie's husband, and he hung up and he said, "Katie's gone. She's gone." Katie had laid her babies down for their late afternoon nap, talked to her husband Sloan on the cell phone, made plans for the night, typed up a note on the computer, walked in their bedroom, and took her life. She was 25 years old. She was a wife, a mother, a veteran, and she was gone. I often tell people that over the next 2 weeks, we walked through a cloud of fog. We were no longer whole. Our world had been totally shattered. Over the next several months, I learned the truth. I met with many of Katie's friends, and they were all still just shocked. How could they have missed this? These young ladies were raising babies together and spending afternoons in the parks with their kids, and many of them also had husbands in the military. One afternoon, I had lunch with 4 of her friends, and as we were walking to the car, one of Katie's closest friends started to cry, and she said, "I knew. Katie told me she wanted to do this, but I didn't believe her. She told me she wouldn't do this because of the kids." This sweet young woman who adored Katie and whose kids were best friends with Katie's little babies was reeling from Katie's death. I comforted her the best that I could. That's when she told me that Katie had been struggling with being a young mom of 3 babies, her mental health. She was still dealing with a contentious relationship with her mother. Katie's husband is a wonderful young man. He was raised in a small farm community in Kansas, a deeply religious man, and he truly thought that if Katie and her mom could find a common ground, that they could mend their ways. And although that he thought he was doing a good thing, I think he didn't truly understand the extent of trauma that she had suffered. Since Katie's death, I've learned a lot about mental health and how we as a society need to better understand the impact of trauma. My family and I are committed to finding solutions, and I also needed to find a way to funnel my grief. That's when we first started the Business Hotline Challenge here in Northern Nevada, and I invited businesses to place the Suicide Prevention Lifeline number on their businesses. And it was a grassroots program that took off. As a matter of fact, I even approached the Reno City Council asking them to prominently display the number on the doors of City Hall, where it is there today. During the Lifeline Challenge, I met Rochelle Pelletier, the Executive Director of Crisis Support Services of Nevada. Ever since then, we have been dear friends, and now I'm on the board at Crisis Support Services, working with a passionate team who sees the importance and the value of 988 and what it will bring to our community and our nation. 988 is a lifeline. It is the beginning of a phase of a system to support individuals facing a crisis. We believe that 988 is the first step in helping, the first step towards compassion. 988 is the foundation for a system that will better handle a mental health behavioral crisis. I hope that by sharing our story, that you will make a difference and you will contribute here today. We've made it very easy for you to do. If you want to use our QR codes, and I want to share a brief story with you about how impactful this number is. You heard earlier that Rochelle Pelletier spoke about Secretary Becerra being here. While he was here, we had Secret Service who was in the building with him. There was a gentleman who was with Secret Service who was standing listening to one of our calls being taken in the call center. And I could see something was happening. And I said to Rochelle, "I'm concerned." And he said, as we chatted with him, "I'm a Marine veteran, and I give this number out on a daily basis. I've never been on the other side of that call." He was so impacted by what we are doing in this community. So with that being said, I ask you to please make a donation, make a contribution. What we are creating is working, and it is saving lives. And I believe the 988 number, as we continue to unfold across our nation, will be a lifeline not just for those in crisis, but as Rochelle has stated, when your family member or friend is in crisis, you are all in crisis. You want help, and we are here to give that help. Thank you all so very much for taking the time to be here today. Please make a contribution and know that you will be saving lives. Thank you so very much. I'm going to hand this over to you, Leanne.
Thank you, Connie. As stated, I'm the current board president of CSSNB. I've had the honor and privilege of serving on this board for the last 5 years, and in December, I will be wrapping up 2 years as the board president. In the 5 years on this board, I've seen many changes in the organization, many challenges, struggles, and triumphs. And that's what I'd like to focus on here. I want to leave you with a message of hope, because I believe that we all need hope. And CSSMV is hope to Nevada. During COVID, like many other organizations, we faced challenges. But as they always do, I saw the staff, volunteers, and leadership of this organization more than rise to the occasion and come out on the other side for the better. This organization at every turn has proven to be a beacon of hope to Nevada. Our mission as an organization is to provide 24/7, 365 days a year, free, confidential, and caring support to people in crisis. And we work every day to be a beacon of hope to our clients in the darkest moments and empower them to see a better tomorrow. We've been doing this for nearly 60 years. When I think of a beacon, I think of a lighthouse that provides hope to that ship that has been thrown off course in a storm. And that is exactly what CSSNV is for Nevada, that beacon of light, that beacon of hope. And I believe 988 is the next step in aiding CSSMV to remain that beacon of hope. The new easy-to-remember number makes it easy for clients to access care and services. The 988 Crisis Lifeline is more than just a number, though. The number is just the beginning. The crisis response system, once implemented, will be so much more. It will change the way that Nevadans experience a mental health crisis and how services are provided. The tides are definitely shifting for Nevada. You've heard the statistics. We are coming down, but we have so much more work to do. It is our continued goal to do all we can to be the beacon of hope to our community at a time when they believe there is none. We will need to continue to work with our community, with partners, businesses, organizations, healthcare entities, and private individuals such as yourself to make that possible. Without community partners, we would not be able to do what we've done for the last 50+ years. So I'd like to take one last opportunity to thank the heroes of CSSMV. I believe that our staff, interns, and volunteers are truly heroes in the work that they do, and I want to thank them. For them, this work is a passion. It's not just a job. In closing, I'd like to make a small request of each of you. As you go about your day today, I'd like you to find 3 people and share with them the hopeful information that you've learned today. There's approximately 300 people here today, and if each of you do that, we can bring a little bit of hope to nearly 1,000 people in our community today alone. That's just one day. Think of how much more hope we can bring if we continue to share the hope that CSSMV can provide to Nevada. Thank you for taking your time away from your busy schedules and joining us to learn more about the Crisis Response System 988 and CSSMV. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leanne. And as Jeff stated, please take a photo of that QR code on your way out. We do also want to once again thank you to our sponsors, Beacon Health Options, Renown Health, Sierra Health and Wellness Centers, Greater Nevada Credit Union, Solutions at Work, and EOS Consulting. Thank you all. We send you with well wishes, and please find 3 people today. And thank you for supporting Crisis Support Services of Nevada.